Is there a max unit count that you can have within a game round / game? Is it possible that you'll do multiple fortresses for each faction at some point? So different / alternate art for a given faction's fortress. Right now, I think the only max, so there's a max of 2 heroes per faction on the board at a time. That includes Merc heroes. So if you do draft a Merc hero, or purchase it from the market rather, not draft it, that you can only have one of your faction heroes out. Or if you do 2 Merc heroes, you need to have one of your initial faction hero needs to be dead, and you can't have the other ones on the board. Then there are a max of 6 spires per faction on the board at any one time. And then in terms of minions, not at this point. We have not set a max.
Right. I mean, yeah, command points are setting that max. It's just, yeah, there are different totals to each minion count per faction. So, there's 3 Harriers available to the heirs, but that's not necessarily the case for the bottom level unit of, the Greege, for instance. Right. So there's like 5 Elfinkazi. That's very unique to the heirs. So yeah, each one will have its own type of max in that way, but yeah. Yeah,
and no alternate art plans for fortresses.
Yeah, at this point.
Yeah. Can you expound on the Grove Tenders function, the description of the tap roots, kind of summoning the bigger units out? How does that play?
Yeah, I mean, so the tap roots are, again, a very, very, very unique way of bringing units out. So they do not have a upgraded side. It's your base level unit for the Grove Tenders, but it's either a side where you've done or performed the summon, or you haven't. Once you do, you flip it over, and it's kind of a very vanilla unit at that point. It's very vulnerable. I think it has 1 HP at that point. So it's there, but you're more focused on what it's summoned at that point. So as far as what you can summon will be a little bit determined by your upgrades, but the tap roots will basically be able to tap into some of those other the Briar and the Hog, the Steed, and yeah, there's a few other right.
What did we name that?
Well, the names have been constantly changing, yeah, so I'm running through about 3 names for each one. Yeah. But basically, the idea is that with the Grove Tenders, you're bringing out, now you can bring out those units on their own, the upgraded units. You don't have to summon them during, but the nice thing about that is that if you wait, it kind of makes your opponents commit to their plan, their strategy, their speed, and then you're able to react to that mid-onslaught phase. So you do risk certain things like events or relics from the other team coming into play and totally wiping out your taproot before you can summon something, which would be somewhat devastating if you let that happen. So you're always kind of trying to push that limit of how much damage you could soak maybe before summoning something. That would be where you would be maximizing your health of that unit. But you're also kind of trying to gauge when to bring out what type of unit. That isn't just a free summon, that is costing source. So for Grove Tenders, there's a different type of spend that you have to manage beyond just your fortress. Fortress upgrades on the whole are a little bit cheaper, but that's also known that you've got this other way of spending source that you're going to be trying to tap into. So I mean, that's the basis for it. There's a lot more to it, but that's like the basic strategy with the taproot specifically.
Will there be a first player marker in the game? If we find that there will not be a pepper shaker. Yeah, no, not a pepper shaker like we had. I know, bummer. And it will not be one of the Air 3D printed minis either. If we find that we need one, if we find that it's necessary to track effectively, we would probably use a chip as a first player marker.
Yep.
So if you have played Hoplo, you may be familiar with the flip and flip chip,
yep,
which is used to determine first player to start the game. So yeah, yep, we've done things like that before.
Sure. Yep.
I'm on the fence about the Spire miniatures. Can you give us a little reassurance that they'll match the quality of the other components in the game? Just a little. Just a
Just
little
a little
reassurance. I have not. I've been very removed from the minis process, so I'm gonna.
I think at this point, like, this is gonna feel just a little. Minis are new to us. There's no, no way around that. We have a lot of resources to draw from. I think this is the same thing I said kind of earlier on in the campaign too. So we will pursue the minis, and we are pursuing the minis with as much fervor and desire for excellence within the. It's a component just like all the rest of ours that we grade ourselves on, and no others are grading us on. And so, yes, to that degree. I mean, that's as much as I can say right now at this stage with it. The sculpts are coming along. We have Anthony working on them, which I'm really excited about because he has a passion for his initial creation and thought to the spires that he wants to maintain right into the minis. So like he's not gonna go at that in anything but full focus on making it look really good. We also have other things that we want to be taking into account, such as we're okay with the minis growing outward as they go up, but like the base of the mini needs to stay fairly tight so that we're not bumping into each other, and you're able to move minions past them. So like we want that to be less than the size of the hex itself, and so there's some strategy behind how we develop those. It's not just a come up with a model and throw it in. There's a lot of little things that we're looking at. Easy way to we want the chips to be held on the top in place rather than just a flat surface, but we also don't want the chip to sink in so hard that you're having to pick at it to lift that chip up and off. So little stuff like that definitely matters to us, and we're putting a lot of thought into the process. But beyond that, right now, we're just still too early in the stage for me to be, spouting confidence with the place that we're using to manufacture them and all the rest of that.
Yeah.
Just know that we're dedicated to doing the best job we can with it. So.
And like the solo and co-op scenarios, there will be a lot more information coming as we get further down. So, again, if you're not sold yet, if we haven't sold you yet, give us a chance to. We're happy to continue to prove out the concept. So
I'll handle Greg's quickly.
Yeah, go for it.
Greg has a good question. The market sounds a little off thematically for this world. This isn't a farming simulation.
Or is it?
Yeah, you don't know. Perhaps a new word for these would help immersion. For the market, I also struggle with how I see it fitting into the two factions battling each other. Where is this market? How do you both have access to it? So it's unfortunate if we didn't clearly answer that. It's definitely in the novella, so that answer is sitting right there for you, but it has to do with the gate ports. So the gate ports currently within each faction are an access down to the world, and it's the main source for these factions to recruit from. The world itself hasn't divided into these factions and is a very neutral place, at least in this area. And so, you're basically sending emissaries of sorts down to the world to negotiate and convince recruits to come, potentially supplies to come to your faction. There's a lot more about that in just who can travel to the world due to kind of a taint that happens when you travel through the gate port. So there's a little bit of that written in already as well. It's just when we're putting out a campaign, you really have to pick and choose what amount of information you give. So there are probably a few holes or disconnects there. I assure you, thematically speaking, I assure you that the market does have and kind of makes sense once you see that piece filled in. So that's something we could definitely handle within an update in the next few weeks and whatnot, just to give people a better idea of how that shapes up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Part of it too, our mercs probably have the artwork for the mercs is in an earlier state than all our faction art as well.
By far.
So we haven't done a real like close up and that sort of thing on all of that stuff, simply because some of the, from a theme perspective, some of that's in early development still, but from a storyline standpoint, yeah, it's absolutely in place and it makes a lot of sense within the game world. So
yep.
When a hero is killed, does he or she return to the stack of the rest of the chips available, and can it be purchased later on again, or is it practically out of the game permanently? It is not practically out of the game permanently. It is out of the game permanently. Yeah, we want heroes to be precious. We want you to be thinking very, very carefully about how you use them. That is why we stated, though, in an earlier update too, we feel that they're a little bit too squishy right now. You can see in our playthroughs we're very, very cautious with our heroes, and we almost never run them into battle because we're afraid that they're going to die and then they'll be gone. So that is why we want to buff them up a little bit and make them less squishy. So yeah. Will there be a way for backers to influence some of the fluff of the game, naming of different units the same way as we had with Undertow, naming of Nightshade, etc.? Sorry.
I don't think we've really worked that into this. Yeah. Like it was interesting. This was a little bit different campaign for us, just because we've talked about this once before, but like the daily story updates from Undertow campaign were awesome. They killed us. They literally killed us. Like we were dead after, idea-wise, just like, you know, we really invested a lot in it. And I say we, and I'm saying you for the most part. But I mean, it was everybody. It was everybody. I stated, I think, in an update before, because we were getting a lot of questions about that. We chose in this campaign not to work 90-hour work weeks, and that is that is literally not an exaggeration. The Undertow campaign, we were at least during the beginning and the end of the campaign, we were legitimately putting in 90 hours, and even on this campaign, I mean, I've been up past midnight pretty much every night for the last 2 weeks, and that's not to be a martyr under any circumstance, but that's really, we wanted this campaign to be a little bit easier on us and easier on our families, and so that's why we haven't worked some of that stuff in. I don't think we're necessarily opposed to, especially with the mercs and stuff. We really like our names for the actual faction units right now, but especially for a lot of the merc units, or like Bug 1 and Bug 2, for example. That's Help us name Bug 1 and Bug 2.
Yeah, we could certainly open some of that up to group votes and that kind of thing. And if we run into a situation where we need to determine the color of a die or something like that, I see no reason why we couldn't open that up. We just need a minute to catch our breath. Then we can start tackling some of that.
Luca Gali. Your question is, how are you balancing out the game? Are there any framework that you are using, simulation software, etc.? Well, so talking about balancing of the games is kind of a trade secret for each company. I don't think a lot of publishers really have a secret sauce to it. We just have multiple stages in which we carry our game through, and we have playtesting, just like everybody else. It's just, that's exactly what's going on is, and we don't have any secret supercomputer back there, but we do have some staff that we just pay that just kind of grind, and like you said earlier about breaking the game, we purposely try to do things that break the game, and then we rebuild it, and it's a long process, and we usually give ourselves several months to just kind of tighten all the screws.
But in fairness, like Adam, so like with Too Many Bones, originally with Too Many Bones, Adam came up with a pretty involved metric measurement that we could kind of plug each gear lock into based on stats, based on health. Certain stats weighed more, certain talents or skills weighed more. Like there's definitely a lot of that going on. We have spreadsheets that are kind of totaling different numbers for each, totaling entire stats that appear on a chip, rating the talents and all of that kind of stuff. So without like describing that in detail, there's definitely that going on. But what you're getting at is that in the end, like that's gonna reveal itself best by just intense amount of playtesting and reaction to those numbers. So
thank you.
We put the game too in front of novice gamers as well as really, really high-level gamers. One of our playtesters is actually was a very, very high-level Warhammer tournament player. Also happens to be our convention guy, Andrew Chesney. So we're making sure that it gets put through the ringer by multiple levels of gamers, so that to also make sure that it's fun and not too, we don't want to get too into the meta, so that new gamers can't pick it up. So will there be more large hex groups than needed for most scenarios, or will most scenarios use them all? I see this is a good way to add more replayability.
Yep.
The base setup for the game, in the main box, you have one unused large hex group, right? Is that correct?
I would have to look at what we unlocked. I think they're all
There's
used.
8 in the game and 7 a full build.
Yes.
Yes.
One extra.
Yeah.
One extra.
And then with the Portal Seekers, we're adding 2 more large hex groups, I think, are in the Portal Seekers box.
Yep.
So that, yes, so there are some options there in terms of adding. We want eventually to develop a whole bunch of cool terrain so that every game really feels like a unique scenario.
But specifically for the solo and co-op, you're not building all of them out, so you do have extras. So I think that's what they were getting at.
Yeah. Okay.
And so yes, the answer is yes.
You plan to have individual inserts for each faction Spire miniature, or for the individual faction Spire miniatures, so you can easily take out your faction Spires during setup. I don't know that we've thought that far ahead yet. That sounds like something we'd do.
I mean,
we're not into the box design process yet, because we had to wait and see how much content was unlocked and that kind of thing. So and again, I think I've said this a million times too. We weren't sure we were doing minis up until legitimately a couple days before the campaign, because we were waiting for our quote to come back from our manufacturer. So that we're still in the early stages of that, but that sounds like a great idea and like something that we would certainly attempt if possible.
Heck yeah.
In Hoplo, some solo trials are very difficult if you have no lucky rolls. Do you plan to mitigate that in Cloudspire and keep the challenge without adding too many random events?
I think number one, I think it would be fun for us to do some playthroughs of those solos at some point, just to see. Yeah, because I've seen that a lot. Yes, at the very top level of the solo trials, it's.
You're talking specifically in Origins, right?
Yeah, I'm talking about Origins, but like they're extremely tough, and there is some reliance on rolls. But there are a couple units that I have yet to see people try at least, and then post. So I always just kind of smile when I see that. We don't want to expose a specific solution to a game, but at the same time, I'm so curious what people are coming up with there. But to answer this question, yes, the fact that they're at the top levels, a lot of people are reliant on those lucky rolls. We certainly don't want. There is very little rolling in Cloudspire. You've got the spires that are there, and that's likely not where the difficulty is going to come from in completing these challenges, or objectives. So likely that will come in either losing, not being able to complete it within the amount of or the allotted amount of waves, or just trying to come up with a way to keep the enemy at bay. So but that's like 2 examples of a lot of different win conditions or objectives that you have to solve. So
again, there's so many things we can break in solo
it is
because we can force you to use certain units that you maybe wouldn't want to use in a certain situation. We can take away a unit's most powerful skill or talent rather. We can give an enemy hero like 7 upgrades and make them just miserable to deal with and have them roll around the map crushing everything. So there's a number of things that we can do there. But yeah, I mean in general, I mean Cloudspire is less reliant on luck, I think, than any game. Not with backup plans and stuff, there's a million ways to mitigate luck in Too Many Bones, but there's not many dice rolls in Cloudspire, so it's hard to even require it to be very luck based.
Right.
Like it's much more deterministic than anything that we've ever done before. So. How about 2 people combining? This is from Thomas Around. how about 2 people combining their copies of Cloudspire together to form a monster 8-player game, double the hexes and everything available to build the map. Thomas, I don't think 2 people need to combine their game. I think you could purchase 2 copies, help us reach some stretch goals, and yeah, combine them up. You could even go. You could go Brawnin on Brawnin. There's a million. Everybody watching this. Thomas has just discovered a brand new way to play and reach stretch goals, and I think we should. I think he deserves to be commended.
Yes.
So thank you for your extra $100, Thomas. We really appreciate it. It's not. Sorry. In all seriousness, I don't think it's not something that we've tried yet. It would be a very, very long game if you were going to do that. That's not to say it's not possible. It would probably work pretty well. But it would take a very long time, especially because the movement speed of every unit is tailored to this size of map. So maybe if you went doubled everybody's movement speed, I don't know.
Yeah.
I do want to add, though, I love how people are taking our games and trying to come up with their own scenarios or their own challenges or their own rule sets, modifications. Definitely something that we will probably encourage you guys to try. But that's after the Cloudspire game comes out, and you guys, when you have it in your possession, go crazy and let us know what you come up with. Absolutely.
Yeah, so. Absolutely. Paul Le Guin, can you discuss how you have thought about Kingmaking and player elimination in a 3 to 4 player game?
Yeah. Any one of us. I feel like I've been talking a lot, so I don't want to go for it if you want to.
I better not.
Okay, so
no, we can't discuss it. I'm sorry.
We can't.
Well, there's a couple things. Paul, I hope you've watched the 3-player video that we did a couple updates ago. There's a lot of things built in that sort of inherently balance the game. Number one, there is the ability to team up on somebody who is crushing. So you can have, in a 3-player game or even in a 4-player game. I mean, you can go up against them and try to knock them out. However, if you do that, every time a unit is destroyed, you give the unit that last hit it some source. So you're potentially feeding that player that is doing well a whole bunch of currency, potentially. Yep. And if 3 people or 2 people send all their minions at one player and they don't time it right, they really need to. There needs to be some synergy there. They're going to end up locking against each other and starting to hit each other on their way to their intended target. So there's some things there. The other thing is that because of the way that the command points scale, it's really, really hard. You can if things go really badly for you, you can lose a decent amount of fortress health early in the game, but you're never really out of it because of the way that the command points scale. That sort of auto balances everything. And then the events, too, can have some very unfortunate side effects depending on your strategy. And we're trying to put one in, that could potentially wreck just about any strategy that you could think of. I think in the 2-player game that Josh and I played, we filmed it a couple times. Yeah, so I can't remember if this is one that made it on camera or not. I had beefed up every Spire I had on the board with range, with lots of range. I was like, yes, this is going to be great. I'm going to be able to hit them from anywhere. And then we drew an event that crushed impending doom or something, impending island crash that removes, if you let it happen or don't commit 10 source, it removes all range from all Spires on the board. And if the players don't collaborate and pay at least 10 source. Well, obviously, with me with a bunch of range on my Spires, Josh had no interest in assisting me in paying for to keep that range from going away. Right. So there's a whole bunch of different things going on that are going to help balance the game, in addition to just playing better. So we want there to be, like any great game, we want there to be enough there that a really, really great strategic player is going to win more often than not. But we also want enough luck built into the game and enough randomness built into the game that you always have a fighting chance. Yep. And in terms of player elimination, why don't you?
Okay, I'll talk about that quickly. And just one other thing, there are a lot of subtle, like we've mentioned a couple of those things, command points, the source, caps and stuff like that, and the innate giving of source over to an opponent. So if you do team up, you have to time that right. all of that helps balance. But there's also real subtle things like the amount of source spots that we put on any given large group hex is set. So while there are ways to get more spires into that with earth shaping, like that road is a long one, and so
an expensive one.
And an expensive one. So it leaves ways to kind of bide your time and work your heroes into a position where anyone could be vulnerable at any given time if they're not watching and protecting every angle. So there's a lot of different ways to manipulate the board, to manipulate the market, to manipulate events and landmarks to the point where you could give yourself that chance to take out someone who's a front runner in the game. The only other thing for just in regards to what was the other part of that question? The player elimination.
Yeah.
I mean, we've talked about that a few times.
Oliver's question is related to
yeah. I guess I don't want to, like, I think we've answered the question a number of times, so I want to talk about it from, is there any other aspect to that, or should we just talk about how it works? I mean, because like if you're taken out, you're down one wave while your fortress repairs itself, and then you come up with 5 health. During that time, you lose all spires that are out on the board at the time, but you don't lose any of your advancements within your fortress. So you're down. No one can send units your way. So while the wave is, that one wave is lost to you, the enemy is, it's forcing the enemy to target each other, and in that way they're knocking down each other's spires. You come up and you still have a fighting chance even though you're maybe on the back foot. So again, it kind of depends on the timing of when you are taken out, because if it's, if it ends in wave 9 and you're taken out in wave 8, then you don't have a way back in.
And again, so in 3 and 4 player games, you're choosing how many waves you're going to play, and it's the fortress that has the most health at the end of those waves is the winner. And if there is a tie, then it comes down to whoever has the most source at the end of that wave. So that's the
if you haven't managed to eliminate all other players in any given one wave, which is tough to do because you have to direct your minions toward one faction. Your hero would have to go toward another. Anyway, sorry, I go ahead.
In short, player elimination is not really a thing in this game.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Correct.
Everybody's going to be playing all the way to the end.
I like this question from Jonathan. This will be an interesting one for both of you. A year ago, you were interviewed by Man vs. Meeple when we were releasing Triplock, and they asked if there were any more games coming out or ideas that you had. Josh replied and was dodging around the question. Adam finally said, "Go ahead and say the name," which was Cloudspire. That was the first public glimpse at Cloudspire in the name. Was Cloudspire the game that you thought it would become today, or did it change? And if it did change, what aspects has been very different?
For me, the vision for the development of the world, the factions, are coming to fruition in a way that I think I was envisioning them at that time. What is most different, I would say, is the minion setup and deployment. I feel like, Josh, with our work, when we were working on that part, you were the one that started like ticking that box of, all right, more than just individual unit deployment and setting priorities. What about grouping units together? What about kind of turtling a set of units up to get them further down the lane or down the path? Like, what kind of dynamics does that bring in, and how much more strategy can we kind of extract from that type of mechanic? It was not something my mind was on when we first were working through that, and I really like how that's kind of come out. So like, I would say that is different. And then probably I wasn't really, I don't know, I'm really liking how we've been able to make the factions so different from one another. I wanted that, but I didn't really know how that was going to be achieved initially, and so just the kinds of things we're doing with them is exciting, and I don't think that was in my mind at the time. like exact ways we were going to, you know, differentiate the factions from one another. So, yeah.
Cloudspire, I think we've been talking about a game similar to Cloudspire for several years now.
We have,
and
yeah.
So this one has kind of been in our portfolio for some time, but we kind of brought it forth not long before the Man vs. Meeple interview, and I think at that time, it was probably about that time when we decided we were ready to push it forward, not long before that, and then so at that time, thematically, we're kind of right where we thought we would be. Yeah, just envisioning the game as far as the size on the table, the amount of maintenance, the amount of automation versus the player control, the solo, as well as the PvP, like all of that is coming together. I think it's important to note that we've been developing this game behind the scenes for quite some time now.
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, yeah.
So we work on, and probably, I don't know if we've mentioned this before, but like there's two kind of tiers to the game ideas. We have maybe anywhere from 10 to 15 that we bring along at a much more casual pace, building docks, you know, working out little mechanics. If we come across something that's not a perfect fit, we try not to force that in, but it's like it's a beautiful mechanic that we want to have resurfaced potentially in another game if it fits. So we put that aside, and you have a mechanics dock. You have, so like that's, but then you have another tier that you're like, okay, these are 3 good games that you know that could be brought forth at any given time. What's out in the market right now? How is that? You know, what's the competition like? All that kind of stuff.
Sure, yeah. I guess where I was going with that is the game was more developed than people realized at that point in time. So that's why there's still a lot of similarity from that time to now, because we didn't just come up with the idea at that interview. I mean, it was well before. So we have been working on it for quite some time, and so the vast majority of the changes of our vision happened prior to that interview.